The Israel-Palestinian conflict is one of the world's most enduring and complex disputes. It has shaped the lives of millions and continues to influence global politics and international relations. It is rooted in competing claims to the same small strip of land in the Middle East, a region that has seen countless battles and negotiations over the centuries. This land is sacred to Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike, each group holding deep historical and spiritual connections to the area. Jerusalem in particular is a focal point of religious significance. For Jews, it is the biblical land of Israel, their ancestral homeland, a place where their history and culture have been rooted for thousands of years. The connection to this land is deeply ingrained in Jewish identity and tradition. For Palestinians, it is their home where they have lived for generations, cultivating the land and building communities. Their connection to the land is equally profound, tied to their history, culture, and daily lives. The modern conflict can be traced back to the early 20th century. With the rise of Zionism, the movement for Jewish self-determination in their ancient homeland. This movement gained momentum as Jews faced persecution in Europe and sought a safe haven. At the same time, Palestinian Arabs sought independence as the Ottoman Empire, which ruled the region, crumbled. The fall of the Ottoman Empire created a power vacuum and a surge of nationalist movements across the Middle East. The situation became increasingly tense after World War I, when Britain gained control of Palestine under the British Mandate. The British promised conflicting things to both Jews and Arabs, leading to further complications. Britain's attempts to balance the demands of both Jews and Arabs ultimately failed, leading to violence and unrest. The conflicting promises and rising tensions resulted in frequent clashes and a growing sense of mistrust between the communities. In 1948, Israel declared independence, sparking the First Arab-Israeli War. This declaration was a pivotal moment leading to a full-scale conflict involving neighboring Arab states. The war resulted in Israel's victory and the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, an event known as the Nakba or catastrophe. This mass displacement created a refugee crisis that persists to this day, with many Palestinians still living in refugee camps across the region. The 1948 war cast a long shadow over the region, marking the beginning of a protracted and complex conflict. It created a Palestinian refugee crisis, with many Palestinians living in camps in neighboring countries, often in dire conditions. These camps became symbols of loss and displacement. It also led to simmering resentment and mistrust between Israelis and Palestinians, with each side harboring deep-seated grievances and fears. Over the following decades, there were several more wars and uprisings, each adding layers of complexity and pain to the conflict. The Six-Day War in 1967 resulted in Israel's capture of the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, dramatically altering the geopolitical landscape. This victory, while seen as a triumph by Israelis, further fueled Palestinian anger and desperation, leading to more protests and resistance. The Oslo Accords in the 1990s offered a glimmer of hope for peace, with leaders on both sides making historic gestures of reconciliation. The Accords were meant to be a stepping stone toward a two-state solution, envisioning a future where both peoples could coexist peacefully. However, the process ultimately faltered. Failed negotiations, continued Israeli settlement expansion in the West Bank, and ongoing violence further deepened the divide, making the prospect of peace seem ever more elusive. The Palestinian territories remained under Israeli control, with limited self-governance, and daily life for many Palestinians was marked by restrictions and uncertainty. Tensions have been escalating for years, with periodic flare-ups of violence. Each incident leaves a lasting impact, deepening the divide and making reconciliation seem ever more distant. The underlying issues remained unresolved: the status of Jerusalem, Palestinian refugees' right of return, Israeli settlements, and the question of Palestinian statehood. These core issues have been the bedrock of the conflict, with each side holding firm to their positions, unwilling to compromise. In recent years, the situation in Gaza, ruled by the militant group Hamas, has been particularly volatile. The blockade imposed by Israel and Egypt has led to severe economic hardship, fueling resentment and anger among the population. Hamas, considered a terrorist organization by Israel, the United States, and others, has fought several wars with Israel. Each conflict has resulted in significant casualties and destruction, further entrenching the animosity between the two sides. Adding to the complexities, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict became increasingly intertwined with domestic Israeli politics. Political leaders often use the conflict to rally support, making it a central issue in elections and policy decisions. Right-wing Israeli governments took a hard line on settlements and Palestinian statehood, further dimming prospects for peace. The expansion of settlements in the West Bank has been a particularly contentious issue, viewed by Palestinians as a major obstacle to the creation of a viable state. In 2023, a series of events set the stage for another eruption of violence. The situation was a powder keg, with both sides on edge, ready to react to any provocation. Clashes between Israeli police and Palestinian protesters in Jerusalem during the holy month of Ramadan inflamed tensions. The holy sites, sacred to both Muslims and Jews, became flashpoints for violence, with each side accusing the other of provocation and disrespect. The scale of the attack, which involved infiltrating Israeli territory by land, sea, and air, shocked the world. Hamas militants fired thousands of rockets into Israel, targeting civilian areas. They also infiltrated Israeli towns and kibbutzim, taking hostages and engaging in fierce firefights with Israeli forces. Israel, caught off guard, responded with a declaration of war and a massive military operation aimed at crushing Hamas and retaking control. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, launched airstrikes on Gaza, targeting Hamas infrastructure and leadership. The conflict quickly drew in regional and international actors. The United States, Israel's closest ally, pledged unwavering support. Other Western countries condemned Hamas's attack but also expressed concern over civilian casualties in Gaza. Iran, a staunch supporter of Hamas, praised the attack. Hezbollah, the Lebanese militant group, also backed Hamas, firing rockets into northern Israel. Arab countries' responses were mixed. Some, like Jordan and Egypt, condemned the violence and called for a ceasefire. Others, like Qatar, provided humanitarian aid to Gaza. As the fighting raged on, it was civilians on both sides who bore the brunt of the suffering. In Israel, the Hamas attack left families shattered, communities traumatized, and a sense of security shaken. In Gaza, a densely populated enclave with limited infrastructure, the consequences of the Israeli bombardment were devastating. Hospitals struggled to cope with the influx of casualties, many of them women and children. The conflict exacerbated an already dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, where poverty, unemployment, and lack of basic services were already widespread. As of insert date, the conflict has claimed the lives of thousands of innocent people. The United Nations estimates that insert number Palestinians have been killed, including insert number children. On the Israeli side, insert number people have been killed, including insert number civilians. These numbers continue to rise daily, a grim reminder of the brutal and devastating cost of this conflict. The international community has been engaged in intensive diplomatic efforts to broker a ceasefire. The United States has sent envoys to the region to meet with Israeli and Palestinian leaders. Egypt, which borders both Israel and Gaza, has played a key role in mediation efforts. Other countries, including France and Russia, have called for an end to hostilities. The United Nations Security Council has held multiple emergency meetings, but a resolution has been blocked due to divisions among the permanent members. After 11 days of relentless fighting, a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas came into effect on May 21st at 2 a.m. The truce, brokered by Egypt, aims to halt the violence and allow for humanitarian aid to reach those in need in Gaza. However, the ceasefire remains fragile and its long-term viability is uncertain. Previous ceasefires have often been short-lived, with both sides accusing each other of violations. The ceasefire, while a welcome respite, is only a temporary measure. It does not address the underlying causes of the conflict, which have festered for decades. The path to a lasting peace remains elusive. It requires both sides to make painful compromises and engage in good faith negotiations. The international community has a crucial role to play in providing humanitarian aid, rebuilding trust, and creating an environment conducive to meaningful dialogue. Despite the animosity and mistrust, dialogue remains the only viable path to a lasting solution. Both Israelis and Palestinians deserve to live in peace and security. Achieving this goal requires acknowledging each other's narratives, addressing historical grievances, and finding a way to share the land together. It is a daunting task, but one that the international community must tirelessly support for the sake of current and future generations. Thank you for watching. Please hit the subscription button to support our channel.